If you're outside of the elite level of chess like me, then you are going to have to deal with your fair share of bad openings. Have a look at this position. And wow, does it stink. This is against an 1800 on chess.com. So quite surprised to see this. My opponent with the black pieces here has embarked on this massive queenside expansion here with their pawns. Total lack of development. It looks dubious. Is the chess equivalent of letting a silent one out and pretending it wasn't you? I mean, how bad is this? And so in this video, rather than go through the minutia here and the nitty-gritty details, because obviously every bad opening is different, I'm going to go over techniques or mindsets that you can have to try and punish your opponent for doing stuff like this. And so the first thing I would say is that we don't want to underestimate our opponent's ability to hold the position together. If there's one difference between me as a almost 1700 now on chess.com rapid and say when I was 1000, whenever I face these kind of random stuff, I had a tendency to start throwing my pieces off up the board, maybe throwing kingside pawns up, maybe getting my queen involved, thinking that I just deserve a victory in this position. However, chess is a game of immense resources, and we don't want to underestimate our opponent's ability to hold it together. The engine evaluation is only +1 here. Grandmasters are going to find that difficult, and so for the rest of us, it's basically nothing. And so stay calm, get your pieces active, get your king safe, and wait for your opponent to crack, which they're going to do. Remember my graph. The probability of making a mistake outside of the elite level in any chess game, any chess position is significant. And so when your opponent does random stuff, they're also walking a tightrope. They're often very close to making a significant mistake. And so let's try and take this from the top. We have b3 from me, the greatest opening of all time. Following Adeban Bhaskaran's chessable course, we have d6. Bishop b2. My opponent has had the opportunity in the first move to play e5. They even have the opportunity now to play e5. They don't. They play this move c6. Top players don't do it. We have a knight to f3. We've already got a lead in development here. We have here knight on b to d7. And now you can see that my opponent may want to play e5. But it's too late. You wasted time. It's very important to listen to what your opponent is doing. If they're doing some random stuff, try not to ignore them. In this position, they may want to play e5, but we can stop it. And in my head, d4 must be one of the top engine moves. It turns out it's the top engine move. One thing engines love is preventing your opponent from taking over the center. And so I played d4 almost instantly in this position, realizing that my opponent can now no longer play e5. Otherwise, they're just obviously going to blunder a pawn. We have here knight to f6, g3, b5, bishop g2, a5, castles. Okay, you might say it's a bit of a premature time to castle. What if they start throwing their kingside pawns up? Well, okay, I'll deal with that. Remember, that comes at a cost to them. Their king is in the center. They would have a total lack of development. I fancy my chances defending against that. My opponent, however, continues down the queen side. We have here a4. And here, there might be a temptation to try and engage in this. In some permutations, you might want to engage in it. However, here, my opponent has been neglecting the center, and so I'm going to play c4. Okay, I've talked about this with the black pieces. If you can play c5 before you put a knight on c6, you should do it. In this position, similarly with white, if you can play c4, play c4. Here, we can play c4. It's one of the top engine moves. We have ab, ab. We have a rook exchange. Fine. Bishop takes a1. And in this position, I'm close to completing development. Obviously, my knight on b1 is sleeping. And my opponent continues to waste time here with this move b4. And so when this happens, we want to look for an idea that will break open the position in our favor. And so you want to exploit the fact that your opponent is wasting time in this game. And so my basic idea here is to play knight on b to d2, e4, e5. And that should free open the position. Okay, there might be better sequences, better moves, but it's an idea. I think the engine broadly agrees. And in this position, we have knight on b to d2, e6, e4. We have bishop to e7. My opponent is quickly trying to castle, but it's too late. Okay, they're spending all that time making pawn moves down the queen side. But now we've got the time here to play this move e5. They're forced to do something because the knight was hanging. We have de, de, the knight is hanging. Knight to g4, h3, knight to h6. And in this position, I make a mistake of my own. I play this move knight to e4, which just basically allows my opponent to castle. There is a way to try and prevent your opponent from castling. The top engine move here is knight to d4. There's a double attack on this c6 pawn. But okay, I didn't see it. We have knight to e4. We have castles. And my basic idea here is that maybe after some exchanges here on d6, I'll be able to create a protected pass pawn. Maybe, okay? A little bit dubious. It doesn't quite work like that, but okay, we've got a knight here. We have a good position. In this position, we have knight to c5. And here, I play knight takes c8. Okay, and this forces the queen off the open file. You do your tactics puzzles the whole time. Why it's important. Here, my opponent cannot go for the queen exchange. It would be a losing mistake. After queen takes d1, we would have the free move knight takes e7 check. The king would move, and then we would complete the queen exchange, basically going a piece up. So my opponent is forced to play queen takes c8 in this position. Again, because I'm doing my tactics puzzles on a regular basis, I do see the vulnerability here of the c6 pawn, and I play knight to d4. But I'm calculating what my opponent is going to do in response. I'm pretty sure that many players in this position are going to play rook to d8. And I was thinking about this for a while, and I realized that that's just a mistake. Okay, so we have here knight to d4. They do what I think they were going to do. They play rook to d8. But this is a mistake because we can go ahead and take the c6 pawn anyway. We have knight takes c6. They go for the queen exchange, but we have here, similar to before, knight takes e7 check. Remember my graph, guys. If you're outside of the elite level of chess, the probability of you making a mistake is significant. If you're playing rubbish openings, it just goes up. Okay, your opponent is eventually going to blunder. In this position, the king moves, and we of course take the queen, and we're just up material. Here, I think my opponent wanted to play rook to e3 now. This might have been a mouse slip, probably is a mouse slip. And obviously, after bishop takes d4, they just resign. We win the game. It was as simple as that. If you're wondering, in this position, after knight takes c6, what about queen takes c6? Well, we can just go ahead and take the rook here on d8. It's check. And then we can go ahead and take the queen. And of course, still in this position, we are up material. And so there you go, guys. 3 techniques or mindsets for you to think about in your games when you're facing bad openings. Number 1, don't underestimate your opponent's ability to defend or hold the position together. Number 2, try to handle or deal with the thing that they are neglecting. In my case, my opponent was neglecting the center, allowing me to play moves like d4 and c4. And number 3, you're looking for some kind of idea, pawn break, which is going to bust open a position in your favor. Thank you very much for your time.